On August 24th, 2001, a plane carrying 306 people at an altitude of 39,000 feet in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean suddenly went silent. Both powerful engines were turned off. A metal giant was moving forward, fighting only with the wind on the dark sea. It was like the curse of an invisible force. But its real secret was not supernatural. An invisible mechanical crack that no one could see. 4 days before the flight, on August 20th, 2001, the Sitsits stood in the maintenance hangar at Toronto Pearson Airport. This 2-year-old new Airbus A330ST3 had completed its 10,000th flight hour. But when the plane was checked for routine, some strange metal chips were found in the oil filter. This was an indication of an engine problem. But where could the technicians find it? So it was decided to replace the entire right engine. According to the Rolls-Royce Service Bulletin, special care is required during hydraulic pump replacement. But that night, due to a computer system malfunction, the Service Bulletin's full instructions were not displayed. It was a weekend shift. The quality control inspector was not present. In such a situation, the technician used the wrong parts. A 3-inch pipe that would later cause the hydraulic line to collide with the fuel line. No one knew that the plane would be installed incorrectly that night. A time bomb had been planted. On August 23, 2001, the CJTS took off from Toronto Pearson Airport on runway 24L at 8:52 local time, UTC time 12:52, and began its 7-hour journey to Lisbon, Portugal. The plane had 293 passengers and 13 crew members, a total of 306 people. Most of the passengers were returning to Portugal after their vacations. Many were traveling to Europe again. Little did they know that they would face the most terrifying and miraculous experience of their lives that night. The plane, a 2-year-old Airbus A330ST3, made its first flight on March 17, 1999. The 362-seat configuration has 2 Rolls-Royce Trent 772B6 engines. Each engine is capable of producing 316 kilonewtons of thrust. Meanwhile, in the cockpit was 48-year-old Captain Robert Pish. He had 16,800 hours of flying experience, of which 796 hours were in this A330. But he also had a dark past. In 1983, he was sentenced to 5 years for smuggling marijuana, of which he served 16 months in prison. After being released in 1986, he returned to piloting. While in prison, he studied aerodynamics. As a result, his specialty was gliding. Sitting next to Pish was First Officer Dirk de Jager, only 28 years old, 4,800 flight hours, and 386 hours of A330 experience. De Jager was young, enthusiastic, but still inexperienced in disaster management. At the time of takeoff, the plane had 46.9 tons of fuel, for 0.5 tons more than the norm. This extra fuel was taken as a precaution, because the weather can change during the Atlantic crossing. But more fuel means more weight. More weight means less glide ratio. As a result, if the engine stops, the plane will not be able to cover a certain distance. More fuel is safe, but at the same time risky. The first 4 hours of the journey are completely normal. The weather is also good, so most of the passengers were sleeping. Dinner was being served in the cabin. The flight attendants were busy with service. Some passengers were watching movies, some were reading books. In the cockpit, the pilots were doing routine radio communication with Santa Maria Oceanic Control. That means the plane was following the North Atlantic track. But behind this normality, a microscopic crack is slowly growing deep inside the engine. With every vibration, with every pressure change. Before we proceed, let me inform you that the plane has now entered the UTC time zone. So from now on, I will mention the time according to UTC. 4:38 a.m. 3 hours and 46 minutes into the flight, a 3-inch long crack forms in the fuel line of the right engine. Fuel starts leaking every second, but no one could see this leak. It is not supposed to be seen. The fuel is instantly vaporizing at the speed of the wind at an altitude of 39,000 feet on a dark night. There is no smoke, no fire, no smell. The fuel flow indicator shows normal consumption because the engine is still running. The amount of the leak is relatively small compared to the engine's consumption, so the ECM system does not give any warning. This situation continued for about 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, 500 to 600 kilograms of fuel was lost silently. 5:03 a.m., 26 minutes into the league. Captain Pish noticed strange ratings on the ECAMP display. Left engine oil temperature 110 degrees Celsius, which is normal. Oil pressure 80 psi, which is also normal. Right engine oil temperature 65 degrees Celsius, which is abnormally low. Oil pressure 150 psi, which is abnormally high. These abnormal readings were actually the indirect effect of a fuel leak. The oil was cooling down as excess cold fuel flowed through the heat exchanger, but Pish thought it might be a false reading. He contacted the Air Transit Maintenance Control Center in Montreal. They told him to monitor the situation. Meanwhile, the plane's automatic fuel management system was working on its own. Fuel was being transferred from the trim tank to the main tank. This started much earlier than usual, but the pilot didn't notice this because they were busy dealing with the oil pressure anomaly. The ECM system could only give text-based warnings. It couldn't show visually that fuel was leaking. This was a design limitation of the AD-30. However, at 5:33, the ECM screen flashed with a bright light indicating a fuel imbalance. The left wing tank was 9,500 kilograms. The right wing tank was 6,500 kilograms. That's 3,000 kilograms. This is unusual. In the A30, the difference between the two tanks is usually no more than 1,500 kilograms. Captain Pish immediately decided to open the CrossFit value and supply fuel from the left tank to the right engine. But this is where the terrible mistake was made. The fuel imbalance checklist clearly stated warning. A fuel leak is suspected. Complete fuel leak, procedure fast. But Pish did not look at the checklist. He acted from his mind. His experience told him to do CrossFit to fix the imbalance. But what he should have thought about was why there was a difference in fuel in the right wing tank. Without thinking about it, he did CrossFit. As a result, he sent more fuel to the leaking tank. As a result, the leak started to increase faster. After opening the CrossFit value, the leaks started to double. Now about 100 to 150 kilograms of fuel was being lost every minute. The level of the fuel tank started to decrease at a terrible rate. 5:45. The total fuel left was 11,000 kilograms, 8,500 kilograms less than the expected 19,500 kilograms. At this moment, Pish realized that it was impossible to reach Lisbon. The plane's route had to be diverted. The nearest airport was Lodges Air Base in Ajara. Distance 300 nautical miles, 5:48 finally. Captain Pish realized that there was no more delay. He immediately called on the radio and, in a worried voice, he said, "Santa Maria, Control Air, Transit, Heavy, we urgently need to go to the largest airport in Ajara, fuel emergency." Air Traffic Control immediately replied, "Transit Heavy, I understand. You can go directly to Lodge. Come down to an altitude of 35,000 feet. But here's something strange happened. The plane suddenly turned 14 degrees in the wrong direction. Why? The real problem was in the autopilot system. The plane's computer was showing the wrong direction. The confusion between true heading and magnetic heading. 2 minutes later, Air Traffic Control called again. Transit 236 Heavy. You are heading 230 degrees magnetic. But why didn't Captain Pish respond? He was busy calculating life and death. How much fuel is left? How far can you go? Is it even possible to reach lodges? Every second counts. Every mistake could be the last mistake. Captain Pish made a final attempt. He told the flight attendants to look out the window to see if there was anything unusual outside the plane. But at 29,000 feet in the pitch black night, what can you see when the fuel evaporates? The crew returned and reported that nothing was visible. At 5 o'clock, the low-level final warning flashed on the screen. The fuel in both tanks was almost gone. Only 1,600 kilograms of fuel remained in each tank, meaning the total fuel was less than 3,300 kilograms. Meanwhile, it would take about 30 to 40 minutes to reach the destination. This was confirmed to be a fatality. At 6:13 a.m., First Officer DeJagger shouted, "The right engine has stopped. The right engine has gone out. The fire is still 150 nautical miles away from the destination." The plane began to descend. At 33,000 feet, it was necessary to climb with one engine. Now the pressure on the left engine increased. DeJagger's voice was firm, but with inner panic, he told the control room, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Air Transit 236 Heavy. Our engine is out. We are heading towards lodges." Air Traffic Control responded immediately. "I understand that permission has been granted." At 6:26 a.m., the deep voice of the dispatcher informed the control room that the pump engine has also stopped. The plane has no power of its own. The entire plane is now gliding. 33,000 feet altitude. Still 65 nautical miles from the destination. No engine, no electricity, no hydraulics. Only a small device, the ram, the air turbine, generates a little electricity from the wind power and keeps the necessary equipment running. 6:31 a.m. The oxygen mask came down. There is no pressure in the cabin, no air. The passengers realized that something terrible had happened. The announcement only said that there had been some technical problem. The flight attendants started teaching the passengers how to sit. Where are the life jackets? Which are the emergency doors? Only emergency lights in the dark cabin. Fearful eyes, silent prayer. The glide ratio of the AD-30 plane is 19.1, which means it can go 19,000 feet at an altitude of 1,000 feet. Since the plane is at an altitude of 33,000 feet, the theoretical maximum glide distance will be 33 times 19 equals 627,000 feet, approximately 102 nautical miles. That is, the plane can take off while gliding in the notebook. But the reality was different. There are no flaps, no spoilers, no reserve thrust. The nose cannot be retracted. The plane has to be controlled only with the tail blade and rudder. This is where Pish's past experience came in handy. While in prison, he had studied the aerodynamics of gliders in depth. He knew 4 basic principles. The best glide speed must be maintained. Excess height must be lost. The wind must be accounted for. The speed must be controlled during landing. The wise man from the past, who had a dark past, will save the lives of 306 people today. But the question remains, will this mathematics be enough to fight against death? 6:26 to 6:45 means 19 minutes. The only sound in the plane is the friction of the plane with the wind. Only a little electrical power of the rotor in the cockpit. The primary flight display is working in minimal mode. At that time, the radio communication was on, and the voice came from the control tower of Larges Airport. Transit 236, we can see on your radar that you are 8 miles southwest of the airport, altitude 11,000 feet. Captain Pish immediately replied, "I understand that we are doing a 360-degree turn to the left to reduce altitude. This 360-degree horse, an S-way horse, was an extraordinary piloting technique." Pish understood what had actually happened. He had extra altitude in his hands, but this altitude must be wasted very carefully. If you descend too quickly, the plane will increase in speed. You will lose control, and if you descend too slowly, the distance will decrease. You will not be able to reach the airport. So what did he do? He made a circular horse and an S shape. This reduced the extra altitude, but the precious power of the plane was not wasted. This technique cannot be learned just by reading a book. It requires years of experience and the ability to make instant decisions. At that moment, Pish proved that he was not just a pilot, but an artist. In the military control room of Lodge's airbase, the entire team was sitting in front of the radar screen. They could see the plane descending at a rate of 2,000 feet per minute. By quick calculations, they realized that at this speed the plane would fall into the sea in just 15 to 20 minutes. The controller urgently asked, "Transit 236, can you see the airport?" Pish replied immediately, "Yes, we can see the runway." 6:45 a.m. The runway is 10,000 feet long. Pish knew that the landing would have to be done at a much higher speed than normal. There were no flaps, so the plane would stall at a much faster speed. There were no spoilers, so the lift could not be reduced. There was no hydraulic pressure left, so the landing gear had to be lowered. The touchdown speed was 200 knots, 50% higher than normal. The first touchdown, after 1030 feet from the start of the runway, was a bounce. The plane jumped and maintained control. The second touchdown was at 2,800 feet. Maximum braking was on, but the anti-skid system was not working. There was no brake module system either. The 8 main wheels locked up. The tire was searched for. Within just 140 meters, all the tires were completely flat. The wheels were corroded down to the metal axle. The metal wheels started to burst into flames when they collided with the runway. But still the brake pressure was maintained. Air Transit Flight 236 finally stopped at the 7,600 foot point of the 10,000 foot runway. There was only 2,400 feet of runway left. Thus, the lives of 306 people were saved on that journey. 2 pilots did this impossible thing without any engines on a dark night in the middle of the Atlantic. Even today, it is the world's longest powerless glide landing record. But this is not just a record. It is an immortal story of human courage and skill. Pish became a hero, but the investigation found him partially responsible. He received the Order of Canada, but also had to endure criticism. A film was made about him in 2009, Pish: The Landing of a Man. He finally retired in 2017. Now he works as a motivational speaker. Just as this plane crash made a hero in real life, it also revolutionized the aviation industry. To ensure that such a terrible situation never happens again, 4 major changes were made to the aviation industry. First, the fuel monitoring system. Now, there is a real-time fuel leak detection system. This means that pilots will receive a warning as soon as there is a fuel leak. Second, maintenance rules. Currently, it is mandatory to have a quality control inspector while working on important systems of the plane. There is no more opportunity to work alone on weekends. Third, crew training. Now, it is mandatory to learn gliding in simulator training. Every pilot is taught what to do if 2 engines stop. Fourth, emergency equipment. Improved backup power system. Now the aircraft has a more powerful emergency power. Although the aviation industry is constantly changing, it can be said that this industry is not completely free from errors. Like all other transportation systems, the recent accident of our country's Air India Flight 117 is a well-known example. Many of you asked me to make a video about Air India Flight 117. But look, we are all aware of the accident. I was also on break, so it was not possible to make an immediate video. There is nothing new to say about it now. But after the investigation of this incident is over, Surely what happened to Air India Flight 171? Who was at fault behind it? There will be a video about it. So definitely subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Don't forget to press the bell icon. That's all for today. See you in the next video. Finally, stay healthy.